Welcome to Hidden Chapters. Every story here starts with a choice. What happens next is the consequence. Let's begin. The checkpoint wasn't on any map. That was the first thing I noticed. We were moving through a remote stretch of Central America, early morning, convoy light, radios low. Joint operation. Advisory role. The kind of mission where you're told exactly where not to look. The road curved through dense jungle, then opened into a straightaway. That's where I saw it. A barrier made of old tires and scrap metal. 2 pickup trucks angled wrong. Men standing too still. Not military. Not police. I raised my fist. The convoy slowed. My radio crackled immediately. "Do not stop," command said. Local security checkpoint. Pass through. Local security doesn't block roads like that. And they don't keep civilians behind them. I leaned forward and focused. Behind the trucks, I saw movement. Not armed men. People. A woman holding a child too tightly. An older man on his knees. 3 figures sitting on the ground with their hands bound. My chest tightened. "Confirm identification," I said into the radio. "Negative," came the reply. "Intel confirms area control by friendly elements. Maintain movement." Friendly. The men at the checkpoint watched us approach. One smiled. Not nervous. Not aggressive. Confident. I'd seen that look before. The road narrowed. If we passed them, we wouldn't be able to turn back for miles. Dense jungle on both sides. No shoulder. No cover. I heard one of my guys behind me whisper, "Something's wrong." I didn't answer. I looked again at the people on the ground. They weren't looking at us like help. They were looking at us like the last chance they didn't believe in. 30 seconds, command said. Do not escalate. 30 seconds to decide if I was going to follow the order. Or live with what came after. I took my hand off the wheel. And I slowed the convoy to a stop. The radio exploded with voices. But I wasn't listening anymore. I opened my door and stepped onto the road. The men at the checkpoint stopped smiling. And I realized something important. Whatever happened next. There was no version of this where we all drove away clean. The air changed the moment my boots hit the road. You can feel it when a situation stops pretending. The men at the checkpoint shifted their weight. Hands moved closer to weapons that weren't visible a second ago. The confidence stayed, but it sharpened. One of them stepped forward. Mid-30s. Clean shirt. Calm eyes. "You're not supposed to stop here," he said in English. Good English. "That's what I noticed," I replied. Behind him, one of the bound men lifted his head. His face was swollen, but his eyes locked onto mine. Not pleading. Just watching. Like he'd already accepted whatever came next. My radio crackled again. "Get back in the vehicle," command said. "You're escalating." I didn't answer. I took one slow step forward instead. "What's their crime?" I asked the man in front of me, nodding toward the civilians. He smiled again. Thinner this time. "They don't belong on this road." "That's not a crime," I said. He shrugged. "Here it is." That was enough. I raised my hand slightly, not a signal, just a warning. My team stayed in the vehicles, engines idling, weapons still down. Discipline matters in moments like this. Panic invites mistakes. I looked back at the convoy, then keyed my radio. "Command," I said calmly, "these are not friendly elements." Silence. "Then, you're misreading the situation." "No," I replied. "I'm standing in it." The man in front of me took another step closer. "You should leave," he said quietly. This doesn't concern you. It concerned me the moment I saw civilians on their knees. I turned my head slightly and caught the eyes of one of my guys through a windshield. He didn't move. He didn't need to. He was waiting for the same thing I was. Confirmation. I faced the man again. Untie them. His smile disappeared. You don't have authority here, he said. I'm not asking as an authority, I replied. I'm asking as the last warning you're going to get. For a second, no one breathed. Then one of the men behind the trucks raised a weapon halfway, not aiming, just testing. That's when the line got crossed. I raised my voice, not loud, just clear. Everyone stay exactly where you are. My team doors opened in unison. Weapons came up. Not pointed at heads. Not aggressive. Just present. Enough to change the math. The man in front of me glanced at the convoy, recalculating. He wasn't scared. But he was no longer certain. And uncertainty is where control starts to slip. Behind him, I heard a sound that mattered more than anything else. One of the bound civilians started to cry. Not loud. Just enough to remind everyone what this was really about. I didn't wait for command to speak again. Because at that point, the order no longer mattered. Only the outcome did. Silence stretched across the road like a held breath. The man in front of me didn't move. Neither did I. This wasn't a moment for speed. It was a moment for stillness. The kind that forces people to decide who they really are. Behind me, engines idled. My team stayed disciplined, exactly where they were supposed to be. No shouting. No sudden movements. Just presence. That presence was doing more than any weapon could. The man glanced toward the jungle, then back at me. I could see the calculation in his eyes. He wasn't thinking about winning. He was thinking about minimizing loss. You don't know who you're interfering with, he said quietly. I know exactly who I'm interfering with, I replied. People who use roads to hide what they're doing. He exhaled slowly. This isn't your fight. It became my fight when you put them on their knees, I said. One of the bound women shifted, trying to keep the child she was holding from crying. Her hands were tied too tight. Circulation already fading. I took one step to the side, just enough to keep the man in front of me from blocking my view. Untie them, I said again. Now. My radio came alive in my ear. Not command this time, someone higher, someone calmer. You are creating an international incident, the voice said. Stand down. I closed my eyes for half a second. Sir, I replied, if I leave, those people don't make it past this road. The channel went quiet. The man in front of me laughed once, sharp and humorless. You're gambling, he said. No, I replied. I already paid. He stared at me, then raised his hand slightly. One of his men hesitated. Then another. The weapons didn't come up, but they didn't go away either. The jungle around us stayed silent, like it was watching. Finally, the man snapped something in Spanish. Short. Angry. One of his men stepped forward and cut the bindings on the first civilian. The sound of rope hitting dirt was louder than it should have been. Another civilian was freed. Then another. The woman collapsed to her knees, clutching the child to her chest. She didn't thank anyone. She didn't look at us. She just breathed. The man in front of me took a step back. Take them and go, he said. This road isn't yours anymore. I nodded once. My team moved forward smoothly, forming a barrier without being asked. Civilians were guided back toward the convoy, given water, covered, shielded. As the last of them passed me, the man leaned closer and spoke so only I could hear. This won't be forgotten. I met his gaze. I'm counting on it. We pulled away slowly, deliberately, never turning our backs. The jungle swallowed the checkpoint as if it had never existed. But I knew better. Some roads don't disappear. They just wait. We didn't drive far. 5 minutes past the bend, I ordered the convoy to pull off onto a narrow service track barely visible from the road. Engines cut. Radios low. Everyone stayed inside for a moment, letting the adrenaline settle before it could turn into mistakes. The civilians sat on the ground, wrapped in spare jackets and blankets. No one spoke at first. Shock has a way of making silence feel safer than words. I knelt in front of the older man I'd seen earlier. His hands trembled as he drank water. Rope burns circled his wrists, deep and angry. "They stop everyone," he said quietly, in broken English. "If you have something, or someone, they take." "For how long?" I asked. "Months," he replied. "Maybe longer." That settled something inside me. This wasn't a random roadblock. It was a system. My radio crackled again. Command's voice was tight now, controlled in a way that meant consequences were already being discussed. "You disobeyed a direct order," they said. "You endangered the mission." "I prevented something worse," I replied. "That's not your call." "It was," I said calmly. "Because I was there." Silence followed. Not disagreement. Assessment. "Where are the civilians now?" the voice asked. "With us," I said. "And they're not going back." "That complicates extraction." "Then we adjust," I replied. Behind me, one of my guys caught my eye. He didn't nod. He didn't need to. He was already thinking the same thing I was. We couldn't just drop these people somewhere and disappear. The road ahead was compromised. The road behind us remembered our faces. I stood and looked at the map on my tablet. Secondary routes. Old paths. Places the system didn't care about because nothing important was supposed to be there. "That checkpoint will reset," I said to my team. "Maybe not today. But soon." "So what's the plan?" one of them asked. I exhaled slowly. "We don't go forward. We don't go back." I traced a line with my finger through the jungle. "We go sideways." The civilians watched us with quiet attention, not understanding the words but recognizing the tone. Decision-making. Movement. Purpose. The woman with the child met my eyes. There was fear there, but something else too. Hope mixed with disbelief. I didn't promise her anything. Promises get people killed. I just said, "You're not alone anymore." As we prepared to move off the road, I felt the weight of the choice settle fully. Stopping at the checkpoint was one thing. What came next? Was the part no order had prepared us for. And somewhere behind us, on a stretch of road that no longer felt neutral, I knew the men we'd crossed were already deciding how to respond. This wasn't over. It had just changed shape. The jungle closed in the moment we left the pavement. Branches scraped metal. Leaves snapped under tires. The service track faded into little more than memory, but it was enough. Enough to break lines of sight. Enough to stop being predictable. That mattered now. We moved slow, spaced out, engines barely above a whisper. My team rotated positions without being told, front, rear, flanks, each man reading the same danger from the same silence. The civilians rode with us, eyes wide, hands tight around whatever they'd managed to keep. No questions. People who've lived under threat learn quickly when not to speak. After 20 minutes, I raised my fist again. Stop. Ahead, the ground dipped toward a dry creek bed. Tire marks cut across it, fresh, heavy, moving fast. Not us. They're circling, one of my guys said quietly. Yes, I replied. They don't want us on the road. They want us stuck. That told me something important. They cared where we went next. I scanned the terrain. Dense brush to the left. Higher ground to the right. The creek bed offered concealment, but it also funneled movement. Funneling is how people get trapped. We cross here, I said, pointing to a narrow section. Then we split. My team didn't hesitate. Half the convoy continued straight. The rest followed me up into the trees, tires biting into soft earth, branches snapping under weight. From above, the road vanished completely. That's when we heard it. Engines. More than before. They weren't subtle anymore. The men at the checkpoint had recovered faster than I'd hoped. They weren't trying to block us this time. They were trying to pressure us. Hurt us. Force mistakes. I keyed my radio. No lights. No speed. The jungle answered with silence. We stopped again near a natural clearing, just large enough to reposition without exposing ourselves. I dismounted and checked on the civilians. The woman with the child met my eyes again. They will follow, she said. Yes, I replied. But not the way they expect. I turned back to my team. We're not running, I said. We're shaping. They understood. Running leaves tracks. Shaping leaves confusion. We adjusted routes, doubled back briefly, then cut across ground that would smear any clear trail. Old tricks. Not dramatic. Just effective. Minutes later, one of my guys whispered, "They passed us." I listened. The engines moved away, fast and frustrated, chasing the wrong direction. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. But relief never lasts. Because now we had another problem. We were off the road, off the mission, carrying civilians who couldn't disappear when we did. Saving them from the checkpoint was only the first step. Keeping them safe afterward was the real disobedience. And there was no instruction manual for that. Night settled in faster than I expected. The jungle does that. One moment you still see outlines, shadows, movement. The next, everything collapses into sound and instinct. Crickets grew louder. The air thickened. Every breath felt heavy. We made camp in a shallow ravine, hidden well enough to avoid casual discovery, open enough to move if we had to. No fires. No lights. Just silhouettes and quiet discipline. The civilians stayed close together. The older man sat with his back against a tree, eyes closed but not sleeping. The woman rocked the child slowly, whispering words I couldn't understand. Comfort doesn't need translation. I walked the perimeter with one of my guys. "You know this doesn't end clean," he said quietly. "I know," I replied. "You disobeyed once," he continued. "Everything after this is on us." I stopped and looked at him. It was on us the moment we stopped. He nodded. No argument. I checked my radio again. Still quiet. No pursuit chatter. No warnings. That worried me. Silence from the other side usually means coordination. I crouched near the civilians again. "Where were you headed?" I asked the older man. "A town near the coast," he said. "Work. Family." "How far?" 2 days. Maybe 3. 2 days on foot. Longer with a child. Impossible with people looking for them. I stood and pulled up the map again. There were routes that avoided roads, avoided attention, but they led somewhere the system didn't like to acknowledge. An abandoned border processing site. Decommissioned years ago. Still standing. Still solid. Still invisible. If we took them there, we could shelter them. Buy time. Arrange handoff to people who could move them without uniforms or radios. If we didn't. I looked at my team. Tired. Focused. Waiting. Command would not authorize this. Extraction would not include civilians. No report would justify it. I keyed my radio anyway. Command, I said. I'm requesting guidance on displaced civilians encountered during movement. The response came quickly. Too quickly. Negative, they said. Do not engage. Do not transport. Return to route. There it was. Clear. Simple. Final. I lowered the radio and didn't respond. Instead, I turned to my team. We're diverting, I said. Temporary shelter. Then we hand them off. No one spoke. No one objected. Because everyone understood something the order never would. If we abandoned them now, the checkpoint would reset. The road would remember. And stopping earlier would mean nothing. I looked back at the civilians. This won't be easy, I said. But it will get you out. The woman nodded once. Not gratitude. Trust. As we prepared to move again, deeper into terrain no one wanted to log, I felt the weight settle fully. Disobeying the order wasn't the risk. The risk was accepting what came after, and choosing to carry it anyway. We left before first light. That hour when the jungle hasn't fully decided what it is yet, night still clinging to the ground, daylight waiting just beyond the trees. It's the best time to move if you don't want to be seen. We kept formation tight but flexible. Civilians in the center. My team on the outside, spacing adjusted for terrain, not doctrine. Doctrine doesn't cover this kind of movement. The child slept most of the way, head pressed into the woman's shoulder. That helped. Noise draws attention. Fatigue draws mistakes. We reached the old site just after sunrise. Concrete walls, cracked but standing. Faded signage in 3 languages. A gate that no longer closed properly because no one cared enough to fix it. The kind of place everyone had forgotten, except the jungle. I posted security and moved the civilians inside. They won't look here, one of my guys said. That's why we're here, I replied. We rationed water, checked injuries, let people sit down without fear for the first time since the checkpoint. No one spoke much. Relief has a quiet sound to it. Then the radio came alive. Not command. Local traffic. Fragmented. Short range. Men arguing. Directions being repeated too often. They're searching, one of my guys whispered. Yes, I said. But they're late. That mattered. We weren't running anymore. We were waiting. I contacted a number I hadn't used in years. No uniform. No affiliation. Just someone who knew how to move people without leaving a trace. When he answered, I didn't explain much. I have civilians, I said. They can't go back. A pause. Then, location. I gave him the coordinates. You owe me, he said. I know, I replied. We waited. Hours passed slowly. The jungle heated up. The sounds changed. Search traffic moved farther away, frustrated, widening their net instead of tightening it. By late afternoon, a truck rolled quietly into view. No markings. No rush. A man stepped out and met my eyes without surprise. These yours? He asked, nodding toward the civilians. No, I replied. They're theirs. He understood. The transfer was fast. Quiet. No promises made. No goodbyes that would linger. The woman with the child looked back once before climbing into the truck. Not at me, at the road beyond the trees. Then they were gone. As the engine faded, one of my guys let out a slow breath. That's it? He asked. That's it, I said. We packed up and prepared to return to route. Same jungle. Same silence. But something had shifted. Because now, somewhere beyond the road, a checkpoint would sit empty. And the people who had stood there would be wondering why the world didn't behave the way they expected. That kind of confusion lasts. And it's sometimes the only consequence you can leave behind. We merged back onto the main route just before nightfall. Same road. Same curve through the jungle. If someone had been watching from a distance, it would have looked like nothing changed. A convoy moving through exactly where it was supposed to be. That was the point. Radio discipline, I said quietly. No stories. No details. Everyone understood. Stories create patterns. Patterns attract attention. The checkpoint was gone when we reached it. No trucks. No barriers. No men standing too still. Just faint tire marks and disturbed dirt where something temporary had been removed in a hurry. They hadn't lost interest. They'd lost control. We didn't stop. Command came back on the net an hour later. Calm. Measured. Almost casual. Resume original tasking, they said. Report deviation. I chose my words carefully. Temporary terrain obstruction, I replied. Resolved. No questions followed. That was deliberate. Systems don't always punish disobedience. Sometimes they absorb it, smooth it out, pretend it never happened, because admitting it would mean admitting vulnerability. When we reached the forward base, everything looked normal. Too normal. People moved with routine confidence. Screens glowed. Coffee machines hissed. No one asked where the civilians were. No one wanted to know. Later that night, the mission commander found me alone near the motor pool. You put me in a position, he said. I know, I replied. You made me choose whether to escalate. And you didn't, I said. He studied me for a moment, then looked away. There will be a note. About the civilians? I asked. No, he said. About judgment. That was worse, and better, than I expected. Weeks passed. No follow-up. No inquiry. No quiet warning. The road stayed open. Traffic returned to normal. Intelligence traffic shifted elsewhere. The checkpoint never came back. I don't know if the men moved on or if someone above them decided the road wasn't worth the effort anymore. What I do know is this. Sometimes saving strangers doesn't change the world. It just removes one dark spot from it. And that's enough. But the weight of that choice didn't fade. Because every time I heard an order delivered too cleanly, I remembered the road that wasn't on the map. And the moment I decided to stop anyway. Time smoothed the edges, but it didn't erase them. The operation ended like most do, quietly. Gear cleaned. Routes closed. New taskings filled the space where questions might have lived. On paper, nothing unusual happened. No deviations worth noting. No civilians officially encountered. That was intentional. I watched the reports get finalized, the language trimmed until it said exactly what it needed to, and nothing more. The road became a line. The stop became a pause. The pause became terrain. That's how systems protect themselves. Weeks later, I passed a different checkpoint in a different country. Legitimate this time. Uniforms matched. Signs were clean. Procedures followed. And still, my hands tightened on the wheel. Because I knew how easy it was to make something look official. A man waved us through. I nodded back. Routine. Normal. But I kept thinking about the people we'd moved sideways through the jungle. Where they were now. Whether they slept through the night without listening for engines. I didn't ask. Asking creates trails. Trails invite answers. Answers bring attention. One evening, long after the mission ended, a message appeared on my phone. No sender. No context. They made it. That was all. I deleted it immediately. Relief came later. Quiet. Unexpected. Like a muscle unclenching long after the strain is gone. But relief isn't free. It comes with awareness. After that, I noticed things more. Small inconsistencies. Too clean orders. Checkpoints that didn't quite feel right. I didn't stop every time. I couldn't. But I paid attention. That's the real cost of disobedience. Once you act on your conscience, you don't get to turn it off. You don't become reckless. You become careful. Careful about what you follow. Careful about what you ignore. Careful about the moments when doing nothing would be easier. I never saw those strangers again. I don't know their names. I don't know where they ended up. But sometimes, when the jungle goes quiet in my memory, I picture a road without barriers. A truck moving freely. A child sleeping without fear. And I remind myself of the only thing that matters in moments like that. Orders end. Consequences don't. People think disobeying an order feels dramatic. It doesn't. There's no surge of confidence. No moment where everything becomes clear. It feels small. Ordinary. Like making a turn you weren't supposed to take and realizing too late there's no way back. What stays with you isn't the danger. It's the quiet afterward. The road eventually faded from memory for everyone else. New routes replaced it. New priorities pushed it out of briefings. Somewhere, someone decided it had never mattered much at all. That's how most places survive. They become unimportant. I stayed in service for a while after that. Followed orders. Did the job. Nothing about my record suggests I ever stopped at a checkpoint that wasn't supposed to exist. And that's fine. Because the truth isn't something I need written down. The truth is carried in smaller ways. In the pause before I act. In the extra second I take to look again. In the understanding that rules are tools, not shields. I don't know what became of the men who ran that road. Maybe they found another place. Maybe they didn't. The world rarely offers neat conclusions. But I do know this. For one stretch of time, strangers walked away from something that would have ended them. Not because the system protected them, but because someone noticed. Someone stopped. Someone decided that the cost of disobedience was easier to live with than the cost of silence. That's not heroism. It's responsibility. And if you're listening to this, wondering what you would have done, I won't answer that for you. Because everyone finds their line differently. You just hope you recognize it. When you're standing on the road. And the order says do not stop. But everything else tells you to. That's the hidden chapter. And it doesn't end when the convoy moves on. Stories like this don't end when the video does. If you want to hear the next one, like the video and subscribe to Hidden Chapters. And if this situation were yours, what would you live with afterward?